if you want to argue that, like, I don't know, like the time that you save by hacking into Pokemon versus like getting it legitimately is an unfair advantage, I think that you have to take a step back and think like, is it an unfair advantage in competitive Pokemon to be unemployed? Like,
It is an advantage to be unemployed and have more time to practice and obtain Pokemon. However, it is not an unfair advantage because no rules are being broken. We are watching the dishonesty of the Pokemon community in real time because they have to mix up words and jumble around the argument so much to avoid the fact that time gives an advantage. And if you are breaking the rules to gain that advantage, it is cheating by definition. Wolfey VGC uploaded a video titled Controversy at the Pokemon World Championships, where, to my surprise, he talks about the cheating that happened at Worlds. But to my lack of surprise, he was very dishonest and bad faith about it. Now, after watching this part of his video, I realized I have to make a direct react to it, because the original plan was to take a couple of clips, go over the transcript, and talk about it that way. But there's just too much to break down, and you'll see why. Also, for this video, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment your thoughts down below. Let's get into it.
that one up. And then we have the third topic, which is the most controversial. By far. I actually had some tweets pulled up, but I think I'm not going to show them. Just, yeah, I don't.
Now that's already really weird. He was going to show his audience what's going on, but then I guess he realized that makes him and VGC looks bad, so you have to keep your audience in the dark about what's going on, and then just not fully tell the story.
I'm going to show them here, which basically is that at this year's World Championships, there were a record number of disqualifications for players using hacked Pokemon.
Now, the funny thing about what he said is I'm the only person that used the record disqualification rhetoric, so he either took that from me, or it shows that I live in his head rent-free, and we're going to see that a bit more. Just funny thing to note.
I'm going to move a little slower through this one because I want to be careful, because I think that when talking about this subject, it's for some reason very contentious within Pokemon. Well, not for some reason. I know why. Basically, I think that there are more or less two bad actors in the space who I think that there are two bad actors in the Pokemon, Pokemon space broadly, who, maybe there are more, at least two, who basically their primary way of remaining relevant is by like instigating bad faith discussion around this topic. And because it's their way of staying relevant, it's like things are kind of sensationalized, things are taken out of context, and things are not really represented fairly because that's not in their own best interest. So
you could probably do an entire psychology thesis on just that statement. The way he says, okay, I'm going to slow it down here, and then there's a lot of ums and uhs and repeating himself and not being sure of his words and then dragging on sentences just to make a lie. According to him, the hacking Pokemon topic is only controversial because of two people. Only two people make the cheating in Pokemon discussion relevant. That is what he just said. I think that when talking about this subject, it's for some reason very contentious within Pokemon. Well, not for some reason. I know why. Basically, I think there are more or less two bad actors in the space. So the only reason anyone in the Pokemon community cares about hacking is because me and Kurt are catching players breaking the official rules at official events. Basically, their primary way of remaining relevant is by, instigating bad faith discussion around this topic, and because of the way of staying relevant, it's like, things are kind of sensationalized, things are taken out of context, and things are not really represented fairly, because that's not in their own best interest, so I want to be careful with what I say. Cheating has been a problem in Pokemon long before I started making YouTube videos. I even came into YouTube saying cheating is wrong, so it's not like I flipped to stay relevant or anything, and I don't understand how VGC has gotten so corrupt with so many bad actors like Wolf, to where the narrative is, oh, it's sensationalizing to call out cheating when players are getting banned and crying about it. And then Wolf says things aren't represented fairly and it's bad faith, and then he needs to be careful not to be taken out of context. So I'm just going to give you guys the entire context. Don't worry, buddy. We'll see who's misrepresenting who.
So I want to be careful with what I say here because, yeah, like I don't think I will not be I will not be given the benefit of the doubt. I will not be interpreted fairly. I will be given the worst faith interpretation. So, I mean, it's going to happen anyway, but like, I may as well try and be at least precise with my words so that most people can pick apart what I'm trying to say. So, okay, what exactly happened here, and what is a hacked Pokemon? Let's start.
Man, I hate the internet psychologist thing, but come on.
There is a program that I believe is, unless they've changed it recently, I believe it's, actually, you don't need the name. You don't need the name. It's not relevant here.
Once again, just saying like, oh, I have this thing, I could talk about this thing, but you don't need to know it. It doesn't matter what's going on here. Everyone knows what PK Hex is, and unless he has like insider cheating information that I don't know about, like a change to PK Hex or something, or different cheating programs, or if he's like trying to, or if he's just like straight up lying. He's like, I've heard about this thing that I think is called Pokesav, and maybe that's what players are using, and that's why they're getting disqualified from events. You could tell, like, he realized he was about to say something that would get him caught by me or Kurt, and had to immediately change and deflect off of it.
There's a program that allows players to generate Pokemon with the correct stats, items, moves, etc. that they want into their game. And this is commonly referred to as hacking or genning a Pokemon. So it's worth noting that these Pokemon are not stronger. They don't give you any kind of competitive advantage in the game, but they can be like generated without.
The big VGC lie begins. That the argument has gotten so indefensible, all they have left is saying that it doesn't give you an advantage in battle, which is debunked by every form of competition ever, because training is very important. Coaching, having a dietitian, your actions outside of the sport or esport impact your performance inside of the game, which is why if you gain an advantage through breaking the rules outside of the game, you are still cheating and you still get punished for it. It's also like the whole steroids mess that happens inside of sports. For example, the drug testing in mixed martial arts is very strict. Fighters must participate in the testing pool for at least 6 months prior to a fight in order to qualify for a UFC event. That's because even if you're not directly benefiting from the effects of whatever illegal substance you're taking in the ring, you gain a benefit in training and recovery. Same thing for Pokemon. That if you are saving time by breaking the rules and hacking in Pokemon, you are getting a practice advantage that carries over into your battles. That's why this is such a dishonest argument.
Grinding for them without going through the process of actually getting them. And there are players who compete in official tournaments who use these Pokemon. Now, this is the first kind of, I think, difficult part of the discussion, which is that this is not cheating. It is hacking. It is against the rules, but it is not cheating. It does not give you an unfair advantage. These Pokemon are not stronger in any way. They're not like, I don't know, better equipped for the tournament. The only difference between a Pokemon that is generated and the Pokemon.
If it doesn't give an advantage, it shouldn't be the most difficult part of the discussion. It shouldn't require all the pretext to get to this point to say, yeah, hacking Pokemon doesn't give you an advantage, even though that is just objectively false. If you have more time and resources than your opponent, you have an objective advantage over them. Also, Wolf, this is where he starts to contradict himself a lot, so we can get into more detail as he incriminates himself.
The only difference between a Pokemon that is generated and the Pokemon that has been obtained legitimately is in the time that it took to get them. But once they're in the actual tournament, no meaningful, no difference at all.
That's the straight up admittance that it's cheating, but the Pokemon VGC community is so dishonest, toxic, and stupid, they can't accept that. We just had the acknowledgement. There is a difference between gen Pokemon and legitimate Pokemon. That is time. When I'm arguing with VGC players, this is where they always break down, because time is an advantage. That's just a fact, and if you can't get anyone to admit that, they are arguing in bad faith, which is every VGC player that defends cheating. And they have to deflect away from that fact by saying, well, it doesn't matter in game. But again, having more resources, because you will have more Pokemon, on top of having more time than an opponent, is just further compounding the advantage.
This is against the rules, however, and so if you do choose to use a Pokemon that has been hacked into the game, you're always risking disqualification. Oh, I guess I should probably be, just for the sake of completeness, I should be a little bit more, should go a little deeper before we move on. So I say this is not cheating because it does not give you an unfair advantage. The Pokemon that are used are the exact same. Full disclosure, by the way, I get all...
Wait, that's a contradiction, because you just said there is a difference between the Pokemon. You cannot have the exact same of something if there's a difference. That is how desperate their arguments are. Also, if it isn't cheating, then why are players getting disqualified? Why is it expressly stated in the rules that any modified Pokemon is illegal? In the history of competition, it has always been understood if you use illegal substances or equipment, you are cheating. That was never argued until Pokemon VGC. And there's no ambiguity about what makes a Pokemon illegal. The use of external devices to modify or create items or Pokemon in a player's battle team is expressly forbidden. It's forbidden. That's why you get disqualified. It gives you an advantage over players who are not breaking the rules. That's why it's cheating. Time is an advantage. More resources are an advantage. Using illegal components of a game is cheating. Using illegal components of a game is cheating. And yet, Wolf is calling me the bad actor.
Full disclosure, by the way, I get all my own Pokemon. I do not hack in my Pokemon. There have been times, sake of transparency, sake of like being fully honest, there have been times in the past where I have used Pokemon that were traded to me that I believed were legitimate. And in the past, some of those Pokemon probably weren't.
Why can't he just admit it? Like, he has been caught dead to rights in multiple ways. The Dream Ball Raichu he used in 2016 cannot exist. A truly legitimate player that actually cares about the rules and Pokemon legality would never be caught with an impossible hacked Pokemon like that Raichu. Same thing goes for Ray Rizzo and the Dream Ball Aegislash. You need to know almost nothing about getting a Pokemon legally to avoid that Aegislash. These cheaters are illegitimate, which is why they get caught with such blatantly hacked Pokemon. Same thing goes for that Top Worlds player that had a Premier Ball Incineroar. It just shows no understanding of legal Pokemon because they don't do it legitimately. But Kirk goes deeper. He data mines teams to find hacking that would otherwise be undetectable, where Wolf has gotten caught with multiple Pokemon. So I caught on to this team just kind of using the eye test. And as we've seen from Pokemon Worlds with like all the top players cheating and then crying about it, also Kurt's data showing that if a team looks sus in a community of 99% cheaters, it's fair to say that it's hacked. So Wolf published his team, I took a look at it, found inconsistencies, and then Kurt confirmed hacking. Also, for the 25th anniversary, we had the Invitational where the Pokemon Company was publishing teams that the players used, where Wolf had a hacked Groudon and Incineroar. It is a fact that Wolfe Glick has used cheated Pokemon on multiple occasions. He knows this. But then he can't just full-on admit it, and he says, they probably weren't legitimate.
Even though I trusted the people, like, the only way that I can be sure that...
And then also for the deflection, I trusted them though. The rules do not care.
My Pokemon are all legitimately obtained, or if I get them myself. And yeah, like if you trade for any Pokemon, then there's a chance that they might not be legit. But yeah, like I do not knowingly bring Pokemon that are... Oops, my bad. I get all my own Pokemon and I do it all myself just to make absolutely sure. In the past, there have been times where I have been traded a Pokemon that was not legitimate, but I have never been disqualified from an event. I have never even lost a Pokemon from an event due to a hack check. So
that was a lot of just like shuffling around and changing the subject really quickly, huh? He says he doesn't knowingly bring Pokemon that are hacked, but Duncan Can't Die has stated in the past that he genned Pokemon for Wolf, and Wolf's teammate Marcus in the I'm a Blissey video about like getting the Raichu really incriminated both of them. Also, Wolf had a copy of the Raichu that he gave away. It's impossible to believe that you didn't suspect hacking when you and a friend had 3 1 in 26 million odds Pokemon from a discontinued event that you obtained in a month. And then he does more deflections saying that he's never been disqualified from an event. That doesn't change the fact he has used cheated Pokemon and has been caught with cheated Pokemon on multiple occasions. If anything, that suggests corruption in the Pokemon Company that I've been talking about for almost a decade now, because Ray Rizzo gets caught with the hacked Aegislash, as well as his Politoed having an impossible Pokeball, gets hired by the Pokemon Company. His friend Cybertron works for the Pokemon Company. Play Pokemon has gone all in on Wolf being the poster child with tons of video features and segments about him, so it's an incredibly bad look for the scene if the fact that he uses cheated Pokemon gets out, so there needs to be an insane amount of covering up, and we even see that from the global director of esports, Chris Brown. There was a record amount of disqualifications and hacked Pokemon at the World Championships, as well as previous champions of international and regional events admitting to using cheated Pokemon. If there's any expectation of legitimacy for a competitive scene, something needs to be done. But because it's corrupt, nothing. Also, corruption for the Pokemon Company International is further proven because we had to go to Japan, where Game Freak and the Pokemon Company take cheating seriously, for any of this to happen for once at a Pokemon event.
So, yeah, I think that like a record of over 10 plus years speaks for itself. So this isn't something that I personally benefit from. If anything, it actually is quite problematic. I'd rather that like it just wasn't possible to hack in these Pokemon, because again, bad faith actors, as well as the fact that like it would just make things a lot like I don't care if people hack in their Pokemon personally, to be honest. Like, it doesn't affect me. However, like there's so much bad faith discussion around this topic that yeah, like it would be easier if it wasn't possible, but it is.
It's kind of crazy that you can watch Wolf like catch himself starting to lie and then have to deflect, and then he just kind of like bumbles and repeats himself until he word soups out of it. Over 10 plus years speaks for itself, except it doesn't, because cheating has been shown over those 10 plus years, going back to 2012 World Championships, where Wolf used a Shiny Thundurus, Shiny Heatran, Shiny Hitmontop, and Shiny Cresselia. It was even worse back in Generation 5 since there were no guaranteed IV mechanics, so it was impossible for any rule-following player to get these Pokemon. Now, people will say, but RNG method. Well, I was told by tournament officials as well as Pokemon Company support, RNGing is against the rules. Back then, the rules were a little different because it was a big thing to obtain your Pokemon through natural gameplay, and there was no argument for RNGing to be natural gameplay, since you need to hack the game to reverse engineer the RNG seed to obtain the third-party program that you have to use to get the RNG'd Pokemon. Also, Wolf couldn't even get a legal Incineroar, Groudon, and Moltres in Generation 8 when it would take 100 times longer to RNG this team. We're seeing every top VGC player complaining about not being able to hack their Pokemon when it's easier and quicker than ever. So of course they weren't legitimate, and they weren't even RNGing back then because it takes so much longer than getting Pokemon legally now. And then saying he wishes it wasn't possible to hack in these Pokemon because bad faith actors, as well as the fact that like it would just make things a lot like I don't care if people hacking their See, then it just becomes word soup because he's about to incriminate himself. Because wait a second, it really makes you look bad when you straight up call the person saying cheating is wrong a bad faith actor. Also, Wolf's jumbled language to prevent incriminating himself shines here. It's either a bad faith argument or a bad actor. I don't think anyone has actually said bad faith actor before. So as a bad actor, he's deflecting so hard he's just making stuff up, and he knows he's cheated in the past, so he has to pull out of that thought before he incriminates himself even more.
With that out of the way, the reason why I say that it's not an unfair advantage is because the thing that like hacking in a Pokemon saves is time, which is not relevant in the actual tournament itself.
Okay, so he finally addresses it, but it's always with that deflection of like, but it's not relevant in the tournament. No, time is relevant if you are involved in competition at all. And here's the best part. Now that he's finally addressed the time issue, he actually has no argument.
If you want to argue that like, I don't know, like the time that you save by hacking in a Pokemon versus like getting it legitimately is an unfair advantage, I think that you have to take a step back and think like, is it an unfair advantage in competitive Pokemon to be unemployed? Like,
it is an advantage to be unemployed and have more time to practice and obtain Pokemon. However, it is not an unfair advantage because no rules are being broken. Players will naturally have advantages over other players in all forms of competition. If you have more money, you have a better coach and dietitian and more training and resources, and also potentially just privilege to get you a better spot on the team. That does not allow other players in less fortunate spots to use steroid. we are watching the dishonesty of the Pokemon community in real time because they have to mix up words and jumble around the argument so much to avoid the fact that time gives an advantage. And if you are breaking the rules to gain that advantage, it is cheating by definition. It's getting harder and harder to respond to what Wolfe is saying because it's getting more and more incoherent as his argument falls apart. Because now, like, he's getting really close to the admittance, but then he loses everything, so he has to, like, keep dancing around it and changing things around and putting in, like, other irrelevant parts of the story. Like, is the person who, I don't know, works 80 hours a week and then hacks on their Pokemon, do they have an unfair advantage over the person who, I don't know, is, like, off for the summer, not doing anything, and get all their Pokemon legitimately, right? I don't think you can police people's time. That's what rules are for! Rules exist to police people's time and actions. Cheating has gotten so indefensible in VGC, they have to throw away the concept of rules to justify their argument. Yes, it is unfair for someone to break the rules against someone else who is following the rules. That is basic competition and fair. The rules exist to enforce fairness. And when gaining an advantage by acting unfair or breaking the rules, you are cheating by definition. It's over.
So I think that to argue that it's an unfair advantage to generate Pokemon that were, like, not obtained legitimately, I think it's a really bad faith argument.
Wolfe Glick, a person who claims that they have never knowingly used a hacked Pokemon, just said it is bad faith to call hacking an unfair advantage. It's not unfair to break the rules by hacking the game to generate an infinite amount of resources to save hundreds of hours of gameplay over someone following the rules. And he comes to this conclusion after not making a valid point to get there. Like, that was just a long ramble of nothing to just make the default VGC statement of Jenning isn't cheating. Just out of nowhere. Thinking that he defended that statement somewhere.
Also, yeah, like, I mean, we don't need to go any deeper than that. That's my opinion. It's not
we don't need...
It's just what I think. I don't think that, like, hacking in your Pokemon gives you an unfair advantage by any means.
Then why do you lie when caught with cheated Pokemon on multiple occasions?
Personally, and I still, despite that, choose to get on my Pokemon legitimately because I don't ever want to risk disqualification because I work really hard to prepare for tournaments and to not, like, get the Pokemon themselves. To me, seems like an unnecessary risk, especially because I don't know how to hack Pokemon myself, and so therefore I would always be risking disqualification because I wouldn't know even how to do it properly.
Another thing I just realized is that VGC players don't address why this rule exists to begin with. Like, yeah, we know Nintendo is really against hacking consoles and it's illegal in Japan, but the whole Jenning argument is that the Pokemon has possible stats, therefore it's okay, even though the rules say it's not okay. And with this year's Worlds, players were banned for having missing Pokemon home trackers. So that debunks the arguments even further because the Pokemon Company is looking for modified data that does not affect the Pokemon's performance inside a battle, which was Wolfe's whole argument. So that was just like a lot of rambling and nothing to say the same thing that every VGC player has said, providing no further defense or argument for that stance.
Broader point here, which is that why are players choosing to hack on their Pokemon? Are they lazy? Are they, like, super risk-takey, right?
And that just kind of goes on after that, but that's what a lot of my previous Worlds videos have been talking about, is the hypocrisy or just straight up, like, misinformation about competitive Pokemon being inaccessible. It is one of the most accessible esports and sports. The time investment and monetary investment is nothing compared to being an Olympic athlete, a chess pro, a sports athlete, or playing other competitive games like first-person shooters or League of Legends. The equipment, coaching costs, and practice time investment are just much larger. Also, the argument about Pokemon inaccessibility is complete hypocrisy because pre-Generation 8, it was the same thing. National Dex allowed for the use of Pokemon in VGC that were not obtainable inside that game or even that generation. But then everyone got upset when the National Dex was removed in Generation 8, and now they're upset that the National Dex has expanded to be allowed in VGC. But I mostly wanted to see what Wolfe had to say about hacked Pokemon and the rules. And then it just turns out like he lies and then says the same thing that every VGC player says without anything to defend or support his statement, because the fact is you get an advantage that is against the rules, which is the definition of cheating. And because Wolfe is a confirmed cheater himself, none of what he said makes any sense because it was all done in bad faith. Cheating is wrong, and somehow it's only the Pokemon community that tries to argue against that. I don't know. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.